did like a 3-month carnivore experiment where healed some weird skin things that I'd had for like 10 years, like within 3 months, they were gone and never came back. Some pretty crazy stuff. And I was like, okay, this is it. It's the carnivore diet. This is what I'm going to do forever. For whatever reason, my cravings, like my body just wouldn't adjust to it. And I found that I was able to find pretty good health doing just keto. So it was still very meat based. My gut health was not great. And so I couldn't do a lot of vegetables, but I had enough of variety aside from the meat that I was able to manage it. And so I was like, okay, well, this is it. This is my.
Hi, Neely. It is so good to have you here. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Good. I am so glad. Yeah, so any of you watching, if you don't know Neely, Neely has been sharing her love for cooking healthy and creative meals via her YouTube channel. She has lots of followers there. So if you're not following her yet, make sure you go follow her there. She's been doing that since 2011, and she runs the recipe blog indigoneely.com. Neely's adventures as a stay-at-home mom of 5 have received millions of views online, and her talent for creating both original and classic dishes for specific dietary needs has made her an important guide for many looking to escape the standard American diet. I will say that is how I found you, actually,
Ah,
was when I was looking up how to make homemade yogurt. That was
yes.
that was my original one that I found. I was like, oh, she's a pretty down to earth person and just sharing how to do it practically. So that was probably one of my first videos that I made, like copying yours.
Nice. Yeah, I love just sharing whatever I'm into, like whatever recipes I'm making, what I'm working on, dinners for my family. Since I'm a stay-at-home mom and my primary job is taking care of my kids, like doing a whole YouTube channel separate from that, I don't have time. And so my channel has always been just follow me along in the kitchen for what I'm already working on. And so I got into doing the yogurt, the El Ruderai Dr. Davis yogurt,
Yeah.
shared that and, people love it, so.
Yeah. No, I love that concept right there off the bat because I think a lot of moms specifically, and I have a lot of moms that follow me, but a lot of moms will think it has to be something big and fancy, like I don't have time to meal prep, or I don't. But when they find somebody like yourself who's practical and real and humble and just like, this is life. And if I
Mm,
have a messy kitchen, I have a messy kitchen, but this is what I'm doing, right? Like you can
yeah,
do it too. And I think it gives inspiration for them to be able to do the same.
absolutely, yeah, and, there's a lot of pressure when you're a YouTuber or on Instagram or whatever that you have to, like, create these really elaborate videos and, like, teach something, like, "Here, I'm gonna teach you, and I'm the teacher," but when I do my videos, I really try to approach it as I just have a friend along with me in the kitchen, it's like and that's what I think people really learn a lot from that approach too. Like just think of cooking with your mom in the kitchen growing up or, with aunts or, friends or whatever. It's like you really learn just by doing together. So I kind of for a while I kind of felt that pressure of I really need to make these teaching videos. And then I was like, but people actually learn more by just doing stuff with people. And so I just try to provide just a friend in the kitchen and come along and maybe you'll learn something, maybe not, and we'll just hang out.
I love that concept. I mean, I think especially in this day of social media, we're trying to find that person in a sense that we can just kind of hang out with virtually,
Yeah.
right? So it's really nice to have that laid back feature. I love that. Well, why don't you tell my audience a little bit about yourself? How did you get into this health space? I know you were low carb, I think paleo. Like,
Mhm.
just tell a little bit about that journey. Like, what made you start changing the way you're eating, and then kind of where are you at now?
Yeah, so I kind of have a long story and I always, say I wish that I had one of those really simple fairy tale stories where, everything was terrible. I found the one magic thing and then everything was perfect after that. That'd be really nice, really cut and dry, but
Yeah, I think a lot of us feel that way.
but rarely that's how it works out. So hopefully at least my story can be relatable if it's not, the perfect packaged story. But I grew up on a pretty standard American diet. My mom did cook a lot of home cooked meals. We had a lot of, meat and stuff like that, but then on top of it, lots of processed food, just like a typical kid growing up through the 90s. And I started to realize I was overweight around high school age. I was just, more chunky than my peers. And at that point it didn't really affect me too much. But when I actually got engaged when I was 19, and so I decided I wanted to lose weight for the wedding, like you do. And I was at that point, I was probably my highest was like 200 pounds. I never saw that number on the scale, but I was
You
avoiding
can
scales
tell.
at that point. But so like through high school, I was just, just overweight, not maybe obese yet, but just overweight and very addicted to sugar, very much standard American diet. And so when I wanted to lose weight, when I wanted to get healthy, but get healthy in order to lose weight, because losing weight was the ultimate goal, of course, for my wedding, um, I went on the Atkins diet. So that was back, when Atkins was real popular. It kind of had the new Atkins revolution had come out. And so that is when I broke my addiction to sugar. And it was one of the hardest things that I have ever done. And for whatever reason at that point, I really latched on to the Atkins diet and really believed in it. And if I hadn't, I wouldn't have made it through. Like I just really believe that this was the thing. And so I remember like so I'm newly married, like engaged and then newly married when I'm going through this. And I remember like a friend came over and brought like a cheesecake to share because he worked at a pastry shop, and like everyone else is sitting there eating cheesecake and I'm just like, I'm like, I just want to get out of here. Like this is a torture. And so I basically went to the store and got every low carb. I mean, keto wasn't even a thing at that point, but any low carb products that I could find, I basically just switched my standard American diet to processed food, low carb. If it said low
Mhm.
carb, I ate it, So I found, and there weren't many options at that point, of course, because that was what, like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And, but amazingly, yeah, like it still worked. Yeah, you don't have to start perfectly. That's what I love about, you know, changing your life and getting healthier. You can
Mhm.
make some smaller steps that don't look perfect, but it can make a big difference. So I lost like 40 pounds in just a few months. I really broke that addiction to sugar, which was huge. Um, and so from there, at first I was like, Atkins, that's it, low carb. Carbs are the devil, I'm just gonna do the Atkins thing. But I decided that I would learn more about nutrition. I thought, I've learned this much, and now I'll just continue learning about diet and nutrition. And I was so naive because you start into the world of diet and nutrition and immediately you're getting all of these conflicting voices. And so I always think like, what if I had just stuck with the Atkins for all those years?
Mhm.
I might have ended up a little bit better, but instead I was like, okay, well, I'll do the next thing. And it ended up, there's a trail of diets. I got into paleo and primal and whole 30. And I always say like I learned something from every diet that I did. Every time I like switched things up, I learned something and I added to my knowledge base about myself and about, how foods affect me and stuff. But it was way more complicated probably than it could have been. So I went through this journey of all these different diets, and I never got to like a goal weight. So weight loss was always still a goal. And then also on top of that, trying to be healthy. And then I started having kids. And so then there's the ups and downs of pregnancies.
Yeah.
And so it was the whole mess of years of doing all kinds of things that I definitely wouldn't recommend and things that, were helpful. Learning about whole foods through like the paleo and doing whole 30s, that was really huge. Learning about elimination diets and
Mhm.
how things affect me. Like I learned a ton of stuff. But I didn't ever, well, I should say involved in all of that is body image, which makes it so much more complicated because, you wanna just find a healthy diet to get your body feeling the best that it can be, but then you have this body image thing on top of it that, it just messes with you, and so
Oh,
I
totally.
definitely had to work through a lot of those things, and it wasn't until about 5 years ago where I'll say I did keto back when keto first was dubbed keto, and it was very low protein, very high fat,
Mhm.
and it was, very focused on the, ketone numbers and very low glucose and stuff like that. So I did that, and I ended up just feeling horrible and, like, insatiable hunger, and I was like, "Keto doesn't work for me." This was probably, like, 10 years ago. And I was like, I'm not gonna do keto." And then it wasn't until, like, 5 years ago that I started hearing people talk about the carnivore diet, and specifically Kelly Hogan. I heard her on a podcast, and I was like, "I wonder if I wasn't restricting protein, if I could do low carb," because I had just said, "I'm never doing low carb again." But I was like, "But this is a little bit different. Like, if I wasn't restricting the protein, I think I could do it." And so I did, like, a 3-month carnivore experiment where healed some weird skin things that I'd had for, like, 10 years, like, within 3 months, they were gone and never came back. Um, some pretty crazy stuff, and I was like, "Okay, this is it. It's the carnivore diet. This is what I'm gonna do forever." There's this theme here.
Yes.
And I have embraced now that the journey is always evolving, and so I'm a little bit more slow to say, "This is my forever diet," or, put all of my eggs in one basket. Because I did the carnivore diet for about 3 months, and it's kind of a complicated story where, since I had the YouTube channel and I was doing Instant Pot videos and recipes, right when Instant Pot was popular, I got a cookbook deal to make an Instant Pot cookbook, and they didn't want a carnivore cookbook. They had it all set what they wanted. It needed to have rice and some beans and things,
Yeah.
and so I was like, I'm gonna put aside the whole low carb carnivore thing. I'm gonna spend this year working on the cookbook. And so I did that. And all the whole time I was like, I'm gonna get back to the carnivore diet after I finish with this. And when I finished, I never really was able to get back to carnivore. Like, for whatever reason, my cravings, like, my body just wouldn't adjust to it. And I found that I was able to find pretty good health doing just keto. So it was still very meat based, but with other things. My gut health was not great. And
Mhm.
so I couldn't do a lot of vegetables, but I had enough of variety aside from the meat that I was able to manage it. And so I was like, "Okay, well, this is it. This is my forever diet." And so I was doing that for a while and sharing on YouTube, and that's, when I started making, like, the egg white bread and stuff, and that's some of my videos that, I've made with egg white bread recipes. Those are some of my most popular videos, and that's kind of when I got introduced into the keto community. Because before that, my channel was not primarily keto, but that got me kind of in the door with the keto community. And so I was doing all of that, and I still ended up having some health issues that were progressively getting worse. Like, my diet was getting kind of narrower and narrower as my gut health was getting worse. I was, like, kind of cutting more and more things out. And I ended up going to getting blood work when I hadn't had any for a while, and found out that my ferritin was 9.
That's low. In case people don't know, that's very low.
Yeah, on all, accounts. Like, sometimes
Mhm.
conventional medicine will, be okay with a low level. Even by conventional standards, it's iron deficient.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm eating red meat, like, 3 times a day sometimes. Like, there is no reason that my iron should be low.
Right.
And so from there, that was about 2 years ago that I kinda discovered that, and I was that it gave me a clue that something's not right. Like, even though I feel like my diet is perfect or, really good, there's something off, and that sent me on this whole long journey. I went through iron infusions, which, made me feel good at first, but then my iron would just drop like a rock the couple months
Mm,
after, and I would feel horrible. And I was like, well, maybe it's gut health, because I did know that I had some gut issues, and so I went down the road of SIBO. I got a positive SIBO breath test, and I did about 6 months of rounds of antimicrobials to kill the SIBO, and my hope was that that would, help me keep my iron, like, I'm not absorbing iron because of the
yeah.
SIBO, and it ended up that the SIBO treatment was life-changing for me, like, after and I always say it got worse before it got better, like, my digestive stuff got real bad for the first, like, 3 to 4 months, but then after about 6 months, it was like night and day difference. Like,
Mm,
I could all of a sudden eat anything, basically.
wow.
It was just so crazy, and it was amazing. It didn't fix my iron issues, which was a bummer. So it's like I did all this stuff to try to get my iron to not drop, and it ended up, like, being an amazing thing, but then I still was having the iron issues. So, at that point, I was like, well, I can basically rebuild my diet from scratch, because I had kind of narrowed it down to what I could handle, based on my symptoms. But as soon as, like, all those symptoms were gone, I was like, well, what diet do I actually want to eat? Because I
Mhm,
I can build it however I want to at this point. So that put me down the road of deciding, do I want to stay keto forever? Do I think that, adding some carbs would be beneficial? And I kind of went back and forth. And I ended up working with Jonathan Shane
mm,
of the Keto Road, and he helped me kind of slowly add in some carbs, because for several different reasons, but one of them was that there's some studies that show that having some carbs can help you retain your iron stores. Like, well, obviously I wasn't retaining them on keto. So let's try, adding in some carbs for that. So he walked me through that, kind of adding things slowly, because obviously when you're keto and very low carb, just adding a bunch of carbs right away
yeah,
is not the right
not
way
a
to
good
do it.
idea.
Really help, like, hold my hand through that whole process. And then on top of that, I ended up getting diagnosed with hyperthyroidism.
Oh, wow. I don't see that as often.
Yes, yes, and at first I thought it was Graves' disease, the autoimmune,
Yeah.
uh, hyperthyroidism. It ended up being from iodine supplementation. I
Mm,
to, like, Dr. Brownstein and followed his protocol, and, heard from lots of different keto doctors and carnivore doctors that, if you take too much iodine, your body just, expels it, no worries. And I didn't know any different. So I just kind of believed that. And then it turned out, like, my heart rate was through the roof, hot and sweaty, and my appetite was out of control. I was eating so much and still, like, losing some weight. It was just such a bizarre experience that I had never, gone through before.
yeah.
So anyways, I added some carbs for the iron, and then also Jonathan had me add the carbs for to help with the thyroid, regulation. So I also, went to my doctor, of course, and got on medication to lower my thyroid hormones, because I was at the point where, like, a thyroid storm was imminent. Like, it
Yeah,
was it was really
that
bad.
can get pretty dangerous.
Yeah, it causes damage so fast, because it causes your heart to work too hard, and so,
Mhm,
like my doctor said, it's like the damage that could be happening to your heart is way more important than, the damage that maybe could possibly be caused by these pharmaceuticals to
right.
help you lower. Um, so I ended up taking the pharmaceuticals, and it was kinda one of those things where it's like, you might have to be on these forever, but it ended up that after about, like, 4 to 5 months, I went down all the way to hypothyroidism, and I was able to come off of the medication, and, it was like that delicate time where it's like, I'm wondering if I'm gonna jump back up hyper, but my body leveled out, and so it's been about, I think, 2 to 3 months now that my body's been managing things on its own, and my thyroid is in a happy place, and, so it's been about 2 to 3 months where I actually feel really, really good and, like, finally feel healthy, which is I mean, it's kind of like it's been such a
Yeah.
crazy journey, like, of all these different things that I did not anticipate, and, like, working through them one after the other, but to finally kind of feel like I'm on the other side a little bit and, like, feel what it feels like to be hormonally balanced and my thyroid to be working and my gut to be working the way it's supposed to, I'm like,
Mm.
"This is how life is supposed to be." Like, let's just
Yeah.
and now I'm kinda like, "I can't do anything to mess this up," you know?
And then
That's
when
good.
perimenopause comes, it's gonna be it'll be a whole
Yeah.
different thing. Oh my gosh, Neely, I there are so many things in that story that I just wanna, like I wanna dive in. I don't know if I'll have enough time, but I'm gonna ask
It's a
you
lot.
some questions on that because it really is an incredible story, and I think a lot of people can resonate with, "Okay, I'm doing this, low carb, paleo, whatever it is, and then I'm better, but not perfect." I mean, that's kinda my story, same
Yeah.
thing. I started low carb, or first it was just getting rid of the junk food. Like everybody knows Oreos are bad for you, right? Unless you're Nick Norwitz and fixing your cholesterol. But yeah, that's a joke. If you haven't seen the video, then that's a different story. But everybody knows what those things are bad. So it's like getting rid of that and then doing low carb because of insulin resistance and then going keto because of, weight loss or whatever the case is. Mine was more epilepsy and then going like, well, if keto is good, carnivore must be better. And for some people it is. And like you said, for each step of this journey, you are learning something. Like you did take away, but was it the end, like this is the final way forever? No, there was still more to learn, and it's just this evolving thing once you get into this space, this health space of learning how to live the best life you can. It almost becomes an addiction, I feel like, but not in the
Mhm.
same sense of a food addiction or sugar addiction. It's like, oh, how much better can I get?
Mhm.
That's for the people that are chasing it. I feel like it doesn't sound like you were necessarily chasing it. It just happened to be like, let's try this.
There's
But
definitely been times that I've chased it for sure.
okay, well, thanks for being
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, well, because you're totally right, like, once you especially when it's tied in with the weight loss,
Mhm.
thing, because again, that body image thing muddies the waters, and you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this sardine fast to be healthy," and then you're like, "But maybe I'll lose 10 pounds,"
Yeah,
It's just so
that's
tricky that
true.
way.
Maybe that'll just be a nice side effect of
Yeah,
what I
exactly. "Oh, but
yeah.
my goal is to be healthy."
Yeah. No, 100%. And then once you're healthy, it does, typically the weight will go away. Will
Yes.
balance out. But,
Yes,
um,
maybe not exactly the way you anticipate, but
how
you
long was like, over how many years was this time span for you? Approximate. Like, from the Atkins to where you're at now, because 'cause you've been good for 2 to 3 months, you said.
Yeah, so, I started Atkins when I was 19, and I am 41, so
Oh, we're the
that's
same age.
21 years. Oh, yeah,
That's
nice.
cool.
Oh, I was gonna say, there's something else we have in common. We both have husbands named Jeff.
Oh, stop.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna become, like, best friends now. We're gonna find more and more similarities.
I was thinking that, you and me and Courtney Luna need to start a club because her husband's named Jeff also.
Yes, and I have hung out with Courtney, and her book came out yesterday, which is
Yes.
fantastic.
Yes.
She lives not too far from one of my family members in
Oh,
California.
nice.
So whenever we visit, we'll see her too. But no, that would be fun.
Yes,
We
that's
should
great.
you know, figure something out with that. That would be hilarious. So, okay, 1941 on at like 20 something years this has taken you.
Yeah,
So,
and it's not like, it's like I had times of health in there and I had pregnancies, and so it's just like the water is so muddy trying to figure it all out, because it's
yeah.
like yeah.
No,
It's just
100%.
for me,
I
and it's,
get
like,
that.
so messy.
But, like, what advice would you have for the person, and I get this a lot with my clients, when there's, like they're chasing, maybe let's just say the weight loss, because that's the one majority of people chase. They're chasing the weight loss, and they're seeing non-scale victories. Maybe their blood sugar is balancing, maybe, they're having more energy, sleeping better, but that weight is just there's that one symptom, whatever it is, fill in the blank, that's not moving, and they get discouraged and it's only been 3, 6, even 8 months. What advice from your journey would you have for that person?
Yeah, if it's weight loss, that's the big, bee in your bonnet that you can't get past. I say you gotta work on your body image, the mental side of it, because and you have to be honest with yourself about your motivations. Like, are you really trying to be healthy, or are you really trying to just be thin? Because I know for me that that was a big thing that I just had to work through that. As far as other symptoms, I'd say hold things loosely. Because like when I was dealing with the iron stuff, I first went and got a big iron infusion. And, after about 4 to 6 weeks, I felt so good. And I was like, that's it. I'm fixed. And then, a month later, especially, at that time of the month where you lose a lot, like the symptoms just came
Mhm.
crashing back down on me, and it was just devastating, like when you have felt unwell and then you feel better and then you have that taken away, it can be really devastating. So, just having that experience has helped me to hold things loosely. So when I do feel good, I try to live in the moment,
Yeah.
enjoy it for what it is, but then also, not put my hope in that, like, this is it. This is, my security that I'm going to keep feeling this way. Because it is so everything's so intertwined, because looking back on my stuff, I found out about the iron deficiency first, and so I'm like, "How do I fix the iron deficiency?" And you have to go and look for a root cause of that, and so I
Mhm.
was like, "Well, it makes sense that the root cause of that could be SIBO, so we're gonna go down the road of SIBO." And then in the process of that, finding out that I'm hyperthyroid, which also can cause iron deficiency because your metabolism's moving too fast. So it's like, well, was the iron deficiency caused by the gut or by the hyperthyroid? Probably both. But, like I can't fix the iron deficiency by just looking at the iron deficiency.
Right.
And then, get hyper focused on the gut health, but then ultimately that wasn't the one thing that fixed it. I'm sure it contributed as well, but it's like, just don't get hyper focused on just one thing. Be open to, like, following the path where it leads, and I get how frustrating that is, and
Mhm.
how time consuming that is, and how expensive that can be.
Yeah.
But it's just like it's so rare that there's just a quick fix. Like, I mean, how many of us have clicked on the thing that said, "This one thing
Yeah.
fix your XYZ," you know? And
That's
it's just
usually the red flag right there. If it's like, "Just take this pill," or "Just take this supplement," and everything like, when I hear that, I just wanna cringe because I feel it in myself too, like, ooh, I mean, I still have goals that I haven't met, and it's been 6, 7 years. So, yeah, like there's certain supplements and certain doctors in the space that I trust, and they'll promote their pill, and I'm like, oh, that sounds like a miracle one. Maybe that's the one I'm missing. And
Yep,
then you start
yep,
going on this trail of spending money on supplements, and for some people it'll help, but it's not always that easy to
yeah,
fix.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess my biggest advice is just hold things loosely and be okay with the journey, knowing that it's gonna be challenging. Like, be realistic, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. No, that's great advice. I love that. Be realistic because I think I remember at church once many years ago, the homily, the sermon, the priest said, and I mean, if someone's not Catholic, sorry, but I go to Catholic church. So the priest had said, "We live in a gumball machine society where we
Mm,
just want everything. Like we put the quarter in and we receive what we want, what
yep.
we're putting the quarter in for, right?" And I think that applies right now. That stuck with me for other reasons, but it's very applicable right here. Is oh, I'm paying my money for coaching. I'm paying my money for supplements. I'm changing. I want instantaneous results. We live in an
Mhm,
Amazon market, like an Amazon society where, hey, 2-day
yep,
delivery, boom, got it. I think we've lost a lot of that patience and perseverance in the journey. Like you think about, we talk about primal and ancestral in this space all the time. think about how much work they had to go through to get their food, right? Like, it
Mhm.
wasn't just stop at the grocery store, pick up your meat. Like, I saw this lady on Instagram, I think a few days ago, showing the process of butchering her chicken for dinner, I think that
Yes,
night or the following night, and it's quite the process, like,
yes.
just from one, and you think about when they're not fattened up like the Costco chickens, you're not
Right.
getting a lot of meat for that little chicken, right? So it's a
Yeah.
lot of work
And
to
I
have
can eat an entire chicken myself, like, an
to.
entire rotisserie chicken. Like, imagine having to do that every day.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So it's like those kind of things I think of, we've lost sight of the process in order
Mhm.
to get to the destination, right? Like, we
Absolutely.
just want it quick. And I think what you said is a really important thing for people to remember. And I loved what you said with the journey too, that the journey is always evolving. Like,
Mm,
it's not a, you know, I'm going to be keto forever. I'm going to be carnivore forever. And for some people, that's where they're at and that's where they feel like. And if they're thriving, great. I just, I don't know the behind the scenes. I only see what's posted.
right.
So I tend to just be like, okay. One other question I had too, when you mentioned the iodine, because that's a big
Mm.
thing I'm seeing right now. And I personally have started iodine a couple weeks ago. Were you on like a high dose, or what was that regimen looking like for you?
Yeah, I don't share any specific doses
Okay.
online, but I'll just say that I was following Dr. Brownstein's
Mhm.
recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
so it
fair enough.
was yeah, it was, he's the
Yeah.
leading expert on iodine, and he does the high iodine therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of his stuff, and I kind of just, I get very cautious with certain supplements. So I'm just,
Yeah.
my own thing, starting low and slow. Like,
Yeah,
that's,
for sure, and, like,
yeah.
so one of the things that looking back, I'm frustrated about is that I had listened to, um, certain doctors that said that iodine does not or cannot cause hyperthyroidism.
Mm,
Like, flat out said that, and I kinda just banked on that, like, "Oh, well, I don't have to worry about it." And this is like, if you take too much, your body just excretes it out. So, I don't think iodine is a bad thing. I
no.
think that, if you need it,
Mhm,
clearly. But to be aware of what could happen and, like, what, symptoms to look for, because since I didn't have that in my mind, when I saw, my resting heart rate going like this on my Fitbit app, I didn't connect the dots, but now looking back on it, I should have seen that immediately and thought, "Oh," like, just had in my mind, like, "This is a possibility, so
mhm.
keep on the lookout. If these symptoms start popping up, make a change."
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's important
that's something
to.
that I was missing.
Yeah, that's important to point out. I think one of the things I do with my clients is I always say, if anything changes, especially for the negative, like, keep
Yes.
me in the loop, because we want to, if something, everybody reacts differently. Like, some people can follow his protocol and they're getting better, and then some they're getting worse. So we have to be our own advocate and our own doctor, monitor our symptoms. Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? I actually experienced the same thing when someone put me on T3 medication. My
Oh,
heart
yeah.
rate was increasing, and it was low dose. It was the small 5, that's the smallest dose you can get, 5 micrograms.
Mm,
But they were chasing the lab values, which, I mean, I could see that. I did have hypo symptoms anyways, and when we retested, like, same thing, the heart rate was slowly starting to creep up just by a few points, so it wasn't super worrisome. But then he's like, "Oh, it's still low, let's put you higher." And that's when it was like my resting heart rate was probably 10 points higher than it normally is.
yeah.
But same as you, I didn't fully connect the dots. This is like 3, 4 years ago in my journey. So yeah, it's, hindsight, you look at it, it's like, oh, now that I've learned more, okay, I see the connect the dots kind of thing for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and I ended up, being so thankful for the wearable technology we have now,
Mhm.
where because I had a Fitbit for years, but I never really looked at the resting heart rate or any of the health metrics. I just used it for steps. And it was like one point where someone asked me something, I was like, "Oh, I should look at it." And I look at it and I'm like, it's going straight up.
Yep.
Like, what is going, so I don't know how long it would have taken me to realize it if I hadn't seen it, because it's kind of like, the frog in the pot
A
of
boiling
water
point.
where it just happens slowly, and you don't really realize how bad you feel until you like, it hits you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah,
So that's kinda where I was with it, like and so seeing it on the screen, like, okay, there is something actually really wrong here.
yeah.
Really interesting. So I'm really thankful for the technology that we have now.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and it's gonna keep evolving. More
Oh, yeah.
technology, like, people keep talking about a continuous insulin monitor or something like
That would
that.
be
Like, that would
amazing.
be I know Dr. Bigman, I think I heard say that it's in the works. They're working
Oh,
on it.
wow. That
But
would be so interesting.
that would be. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I actually got to try out a continuous ketone monitor, and
Yes.
it was okay. I don't They're not selling it. They were just like giving it out for people to try. And it matched my keto mojo, but it stopped working after I think 2 days or something. So,
Oh, weird.
yeah,
I got to experiment with one actually a couple, about a year ago. I got to meet the SciBio, people at KetoCon in,
actually it's the same
20
one.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so and I did some videos where I had one on when I did a sardine fast, and that really did bump up my ketone numbers.
Yeah.
It was pretty interesting to see. But yeah, since I'm not, eating strictly keto now, it wouldn't be helpful for me. I my ke unless I'm, like, doing something really intense like the sardine fast, my ketones don't go above point 0.5.
I was gonna ask, so what does your way of eating look like? I know everybody like mine, I don't identify as carnivore. I don't
Yeah.
identify as keto necessarily. I just say like I'm on the Jen Winkler diet. Like I'm eating what works for me. Some months look carnivore, ketovore, some months look low carb. So it's just like what I feel like. So what does that look like for you now?
Yeah, it's very similar to what you're saying, where it's
Okay.
like it can vary from week to week or month to month. And I'm still kind of experimenting, because Jonathan helped me kind of build up to about 100 grams of carbs per day.
Mhm.
And I have been there for a few months. And so I'm kind of in the place where I'm experimenting with how I feel going a little bit higher. I don't go very much lower because I feel like 100 grams is really good for me. When I go lower than that, I tend to have more cravings and,
Mm,
just don't feel like there's a lot more food noise. I found that at least 100 grams of carbs like brings the food noise down for me, which is
yeah.
kind of interesting. You kind of would think it would be the opposite,
Yeah.
in the keto world where the more carbs, the more food noise. But I found kind of the sweet spot is right there around 100. So I don't typically go below that. So I'm kind of like experimenting with, if I can go higher, where I feel the best. And then also, if I am going higher, yeah, you can't just, eat all the fat too.
Right.
Trying to find that balance of how much carbs to make me feel my best, how much fat to make me feel my best, but not to, put on a ton of weight. So, I'm around 100 grams of carbs a day, usually around 75 to 100 grams of fat. And then my
Okay.
protein, I just eat to satiety, which sometimes is around 100 grams, sometimes it's as high as
Yeah,
160 grams. That's kind
perfect.
of where I land usually.
Have you ever had, have you ever had your insulin checked, or have you been insulin resistant before? Like, how is that working with you now having 100 grams of carbs?
Yeah, so I haven't checked my insulin recently, but I am interested to check it again. I did get it checked when I was really strictly keto, and it was like, I think it was 2 point something or 3,
Mhm,
like super, super low. And then I did an experiment back then, where I did 100 grams of carbs-ish per day for a few months, and I got my insulin tested again, and it was like 7 point something.
mhm.
So it went up, but still, in the
That's
normal
still
range.
yeah.
So I am curious about it now, but I'm not too worried about being insulin resistant. So I kind of went through this thing where because I was in the keto world, like you just hear about insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome, and you just assume that that's your problem. Like I
Yeah.
just thought, well, my blood sugar's probably not regulated. I probably have insulin resistance, especially because, I wasn't at what I would consider a goal weight, or, I still have 15 to 20 pounds I could lose. I was like, in the keto world, if you have that, you just need to work on getting lower insulin or, regulate your blood sugar. And I ended up, I started working with Nutrisense, and so they were
Mhm.
sending me CGMs, and I was actually shocked by how well regulated my blood sugar was, because I was
Mm.
thinking I was gonna get my CGM and I was gonna see things that were spiking my blood sugar that I didn't realize, and I'd be able to pull them out and, all that. But it ended up I was able to add in a whole bunch of things that really didn't bother my blood sugar at all.
Wow.
And so I kinda had the opposite experience with the CGM where it actually opened up my diet. Like, I found like, I could eat a banana on my yogurt mixed with, Equip protein,
Yeah.
and my blood sugar looked like I'd eaten bacon and eggs, It's like I was
That's
like, "What in the
awesome.
world?" And so, I
Wow.
kinda had to refocus and, like, think because in where I was, entrenched in the keto carnivore world, it's like all of our problems are metabolic syndrome and insulin. And if you get those fixed, everything will be fixed. And
Yeah,
so I
that is what is portrayed pretty often.
yeah, and so I went through this time where I was like, I'm actually very insulin sensitive and my blood sugar is very regulated, but I still have some problems. Like
Yeah.
there's some so I had to really open my mind and explore other things to fix my issues rather than just, ketoing harder or carnivoring harder
Mhm.
to fix these things. It was like I really had to change my thinking quite a bit.
Do you think the gut healing played a big role in healing that? The
Yes.
SIBO?
I
Yeah,
think the gut healing I mean, everything ties together and everything
right.
has an impact, but the gut healing has been, like, massive, like, night and day difference in how I feel and the kinds of foods I can eat. So, I probably wouldn't have been able to do all these blood sugar tests of all these carbs and play with these 100 grams of carbs if I hadn't have fixed my gut first. Like
Mm.
that was the thing that I had to do in order to even tolerate these things. So to get to this point where I can eat 100 grams of carbs, it takes my food noise down, it makes me, keeps my hormones balanced. I wouldn't have been able to even do that if I hadn't have gone through that 6 months of intense gut healing.
Yeah,
So it's like uh, when you're a YouTuber, you want to be able to put out a video that says, I was keto and then I added 100 grams of carbs and this happened.
yeah,
But
but the
I can't do that because there's
mm,
so much in between that it's not like I was just keto and added 100 grams of carbs and it did this. Like
right, right.
there was a whole journey to get there. And so the gut healing, like that was like the key to allow me to even start experimenting with these other things that have been so beneficial.
Did you work with anybody for that, or was it mainly just Dr. Davis's SIBO protocol?
I I did a whole bunch of research on SIBO, and I ended up following Dr. Alison Seebecker's
Oh, yeah.
protocol, if you know who yeah.
Yeah.
I my claim to fame is I used to work with her, at a health food store. She was the
Oh, that's
nutritionist. It was
awesome.
a yeah, health food store. She was the nutritionist, and I was just, bagging groceries there. Anyways, so I know her, but, I mean, she's been doing it for a long time, and she basically gives the protocol out for free, like, on her
Okay.
website. So I really followed her approach, and then I added the Dr. Davis yogurt on top of that, and I think those things in combination
Okay.
really made a difference.
That's awesome. That's good to
Yeah.
hear. Something I'm working on with my mom right now. So
Mm.
I like hearing little tidbits. I know everybody's different, but anybody that doesn't know, Dr. William Davis, he is a gut health expert. He has books out. He does a lot about SIBO. I went through his course on Primal Health Institute, learning all about gut microbiome, which was probably one of the hardest courses I've ever taken, honestly, because there are so many names to all the strains of probiotics
Mhm.
and commensals and all those kind of things. It's crazy. But I have come across Alison Seebecker, and I don't know if it was from you or someone else, but she has
Mm.
a lot of good stuff too.
She
I
does. She's been
do,
in the SIBO space for a long time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, she has. I do want to kind of switch gears and talk about one other topic that I think a lot of people can relate to. So you are a mother of 4 or 5?
5. I have
5.
4 at home now. My oldest is she got married in January, and so she's gone.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Okay, so technically a 5, and I mean, when you started on this journey, you had at least 1, right? Like, so
Yeah, well,
technically
when
you
I
were
started
engaged
Atkins was right before I got married,
before
and
you got
then we had our first, like, a year after we got married.
married.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So, how did you as a mom navigate, like, you have your foods that you're allowed to eat, right? The ones that are best for you. And then you have your kids that maybe they might not have the taste buds for those things yet. Like I think about my kiddo, he will not touch a vegetable. Like he ate broccoli last night for the first time and I was ecstatic. Like not obviously part of it's like, is he getting a lot of nutrients from it? Probably not. But I also don't want him eating tons of protein because
Mhm.
he's still a small body and it will be expensive. So
Yeah.
I want him to be
Yes.
filled up without all of that. So
Oh, he
he does
voiced
eat a
me
lot of
so
protein.
much.
Oh yeah, I mean he's eating tons of proteins and fats, and I'm like, you can have some vegetables, you'll be fine. So how do you as a mom navigate that? Like I've had clients who say, I don't want to make 3 separate meals, right?
Mm, mhm.
So you as a recipe creator, instant pot, all these kind of things, like what do you suggest or what have you done in your life to navigate those conundrums, I guess you could say?
Yeah. Well, first off, I'll say, I have not done it well all these 20 years, because I went through phases of thinking, I need to clean up my kid's diet and it needs to be, whatever perfect thing like low carb or, when I was into carnivore, I was like, oh, vegetables are going to kill them.
Yeah,
And so I've been through different iterations where I was like feeling, angst about that they were eating vegetables or whatever it was. And thankfully I have a husband that really, helped offset that because he was always very much like moderation and it's okay in moderation. But it's funny though, he's way more on the same page with me about diet now. We've kind of had this journey where I was really strict and intense about it and I've kind of loosened up a little bit and he
mhm.
was loose about it and everything in moderation and now he's gotten a little bit more. We kind of met in the middle. But anyways, I'm thankful that I never put my kids on a carnivore diet or anything, too extreme, both because I think that there is nutrition to be gained from plant foods. I do believe that, but then also just the social aspect of it,
Mhm.
where it's like, we're already weird enough, like, we're homeschoolers, like, yeah, we don't need another thing to be like the weird kid at the birthday party that's
Yeah,
eating
right?
the thing that they brought because they can't have the cookies or the cake or whatever, and I
Yeah,
was like,
exactly.
and so, basically my philosophy that I've come to now after a lot of years of doing it poorly, is that we try to keep our foods at home very healthy, whole, a variety of foods. So we have our own chickens, so we have our pasture raised eggs. We buy whole cows from a ranch nearby. We get fresh milk from a farm. So they're drinking lots of raw milk, eating lots of healthy grass fed beef, and on top of that, like I feel like as long as they have that base, since they are very metabolically healthy
Mhm.
and don't have any big issues that they're dealing with, they can handle a lot. There's a great analogy about being on the edge of a cliff. If you can imagine someone on the edge of a cliff and they're right at the end, like right at the edge. One little push they're gonna be off the edge. And that's where a lot of people are with their health when they have a lot of serious, autoimmune things and stuff, people that really have to be super strict. It's like one little thing and they're off the cliff. With kids, I feel like, especially, if they're pretty healthy, and most kids are, they haven't gotten all the stuff to mess them up yet.
Yeah.
They're really far back from the edge of the cliff, so
Mm.
they can get pushed and it doesn't not a big deal, it's like they're not
Yeah,
having an autoimmune flare if they accidentally have, a bite of something.
right.
So I don't worry about it. I feel like as long as they have that base, that there's a lot of room for fun food, and being that we do homeschool, there's not like, in-class birthday parties every day or
Mhm.
anything like that. Like, there's not as much, even though, I mean, junk food is everywhere,
Yeah,
but, like, they have a good baseline. And so as far as, balancing their meals and my meals, I've always tried to make whatever I can that everyone can eat. So making the meat separate, then the vegetables, then the starch side dish.
yeah,
And so then everyone's able to kind of pick and choose what they can eat or what they want to eat. So there's never really been a time where I've made separate meals. It's just like forming the meals in such a way that people can make their own the way that they want it. Because I do, my son sadly is allergic to eggs of all things. And so, there are times like I'll make a breakfast and there'll be fried eggs and sausage and whatever else. And, obviously he doesn't eat the
right.
eggs. So it's like, so that being said, I don't make a ton of like casseroles or
Mhm.
things like that where you can't separate the
Yeah,
items, but, yeah, it's never really been a huge issue because whole foods fit into all diets, it feels
yeah.
like. It's like I make steak. Everyone gets to eat that, It's
Mhm.
like maybe I make vegetables and maybe when I was carnivore, I chose not to eat that, but
Right.
I still had the steak and it just works. Yeah.
It's
It doesn't
so
have to be that complicated.
no, and I'm the same way. I don't but I get this question often. Like, it's so funny because
Yes.
I'm we will be like, "Hey, defrost a meat." We'll grab a meat from the freezer, and then it's like, "Hey, what vegetable do we wanna have with this meat?" And then we just cook them both, like you said, separate, and,
Yeah.
my husband and my son will do rice pretty often. We get, like, a healthy version of rice, so that's their starch. I haven't necessarily brought it in yet. Um, Not sure if I will, but that's
Yeah.
just me. But I do my veg and I do my fruit, and it's like and that's our dessert too, is like we might have a little bit of fruit because that's nature's candy, right? And I know we could go down a whole rabbit trail with that one, but we won't right now. So, yeah, it's like instead of getting this whole and in my beginning of my keto journey, I used a website. I think it was I forget what it was called, but it was a meal planning website that you could put like blog recipes in it and drag it to the calendar and what day you're going to do it and then to create a grocery list for you. It was pretty cool. It was very type A friendly.
Nice.
And when I used to do these fancy dinners and things like that because you want to make it exciting or whatever. But now I'm like, I don't care about the excitement. I just want to get dinner on the table, eat and move on with life.
Yeah.
So it's not surrounded around the food, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's right. Just keeping it as simple as possible, getting a protein, getting a veg. If a carb can work for you, great. Get a
Yeah.
starch and keep it simple. Let people pick and choose what they want, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of people struggle, when they're coming from straight from the standard American diet because whole foods are just not as common.
Mhm.
It's like if they're used to, opening a bag of frozen tater tots and, chicken nuggets and things like that, or making boxed mac and cheese, for a dinner for the kids, then yeah, if they're gonna, do a keto diet or low carb or whatever, they are gonna have a completely different meal.
Oh,
So, like, it is a lot of work if you're coming straight from that to shift your cooking to, like, what we were talking about, the protein, the vegetable, the starch,
mhm.
and, getting away from the processed food. I think that's where, like, the beginners really it is a really big shift when you're
Yeah.
used to those being your main foods, in your diet, everything coming from a bag or a box.
Yeah. No, that's a solid point. And so a lot of it really does come down to like nutritional advice and these are the best, these are some easy options of vegetables you can choose from. These are some easy ways to cook them, which I believe you have a number of videos of things like that on your channel.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this and you're like, hey, that's me, I have no idea how to cook Brussels sprouts or whatever it is, check
Mhm.
out Neely's YouTube channel and see what kind of things she has there or anywhere, just,
Yeah, there's so many
keto
great
way to
recipes.
make Brussels sprouts. Like our favorite way was steaming them and then smashing them with the mason jar and putting Parmesan cheese and
Mm.
garlic and stuff, and they were like little when you melt the cheese on it, it becomes like these little Brussels sprout chips things, but they were
That
so
sounds really good.
They're so good. I can handle them, my husband cannot. He has colitis.
Mm. Oh, yeah.
So those kind of veg don't sit well with him. But he's
Mm.
getting there. He's done a lot of healing. So I'd be curious. Now is the season. Fall, I think, is a Brussels
Yeah.
sprout season.
Ooh,
So
yes. Yes, where
yeah,
you get those big stalks at the store, those are so fun.
yeah, no kidding. Do you have any projects coming down the line? Anything coming up that you're excited about that you want to share or
So,
no?
no, not anything in particular, and that's kind of the way my channel goes. I've been on YouTube for a lot of years, and, you know, it's always been, like I said at the beginning, just following along with whatever I'm doing in my life, and so sometimes that's really exciting, like, writing a cookbook or whatever, but most of the time it's just like everyday life, and that's what I share. So stuff going on in my kitchen. I'm working on learning how to can food
Ooh.
more, and so that's something that I'm going to be sharing as I'm learning it. Not that I'm teaching anybody these skills because I don't have them yet. I'm just bringing you along on the journey of discovery with me. Just stuff like that. Oh, the other thing that we're doing that I'm hoping to get on a video soon is we're hatching our own chickens. So we have eggs in the incubator right now, and so that's been really fun, like homeschool project, but also, for the homestead and everything. So
Yeah.
just stuff like that, just life stuff that's
See,
happening here.
I get excited about those things that are little, like, in a
Oh,
sense,
yeah.
like, I don't need a giant, "Oh, this big giant project I'm launching." I'm like, learning how to can. I don't know how to can. I've been seeing videos about it, then I'm like, "Maybe I might do it," but then just the fact of making fermented yogurt at home, I was like, "Woohoo!" I didn't, like,
Yeah. You're
cause
a
mold to
homesteader.
grow or something, like, it was and I use the mason jar one that you use. I just
Yep.
do a different where I use the sous vide instead of the
Mhm.
instant pot because my instant pot doesn't go to temperature properly.
Right.
So I do, yeah. It's I actually have a batch going right now. I started this
Nice. I need
morning.
to start one.
Yeah, it's become a habit now. As soon as I see one jar left in the fridge, I'm like, all right, pull out some of those. I have them frozen in little cubes.
Oh, nice.
The first batch, so I'll just pull out a
Yeah.
couple cubes. I got my inulin. It takes less than 5 minutes to make in the morning, and then it's just
So
sitting
great.
there for 36 hours. I love it, and it tastes
Yeah.
so good. Everybody in the family, like, we chow down on that stuff. It's so
Yeah.
good. So okay, where can people find you the most? We've kind of talked about it throughout the video, but where can people find you and get in touch with you? Is the main thing you do YouTube? Is there anything else you offer?
Yeah, YouTube is the main place, and then I'm on Instagram also, both, in Indigo Neely, at Indigo Neely. Yep. My recipe blog is indigoneely.com, and, I shouldn't really call it a blog because it's basically just a place where you can print off any recipe that I share on YouTube. So, it's I don't do articles or anything. I don't do anything fancy. It's just to find my list of recipes.
You don't do like the long things you get to scroll through?
No, no, no.
That actually is a big plug to go to your your website because,
Yeah.
gosh, when I'm on my phone and I'm scrolling and these ads are popping up and I'm
Yep.
trying to just get to the juice of it, like, I don't get time to read the storyline
Yeah, and I don't
200
have
years
time to
ago.
write the whole story either, so it's like
No, exactly. So, yeah, huge plug. I will put a link for all of those down below.
awesome.
Neely, thank you so much for coming on. It's
Yeah,
been
thanks
so
for
fun
having
getting
me.
to know you, and I didn't say this in the beginning, but we I forget how we officially connected. I know we're in a Facebook group together that
Yep.
there was something in there. I won't name it on here, but there was something on there we both were like, "This is a little interesting, this device," and we started our conversation there.
I'm
And
so
um,
glad.
yeah, I am too. I can tell this will be fun. We'll have to have you on again sometime too, especially once you
Sure.
get the canning going and the chickens. I mean, we've wanted chickens here. I've wanted chickens, I should say. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having. I will put all the links for you down below. And
Yeah.
yeah, all of you, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks, guys.